The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
Can't hear you. I can't hear you, Sam.
Well, that's because I was muted.
There we go. Start that
As
again.
I was saying, welcome to this very special Tuesday edition of the Whitfield Report. Technical difficulties aside, I am your host, Sam Whitfield, joined here by very special guest, Eric P. Bishop, and happy publication day.
Thank you.
For Supreme Justice, the third book in the Bodyman series. Although I don't know, is this like officially book 3, or is this more like a spin-off of?
No, we can get into it. If the internet connection holds and the thunderstorm doesn't knock me off, we can get into the details. It is book 3, but yes, there's a lot going on with this book 3. That's not just Bodyman stuff. So
yeah, that's yeah, so that'll be interesting to get into. Well, congratulations, first
Thank
off.
you.
So, yeah, 3 books in to the series, and of course, you also have the Omega Group series, which, book 2 came out earlier this year. That was terrific.
Thank you.
3 books in, and, how do you feel about all this? Did you think you would make it this far initially when you started your writing journey, or?
I don't have the Ferrari or the island yet, so I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, well, same here. I mean, I know that you saw, that I interviewed Kyle Mills yesterday, and that was kind of mind blowing because 10 years ago was kind of when I started reading the Mitch Rapp series, when I was in college. And then I finished Vince's run on the series right before Kyle took over.
Okay.
And then when Kyle came onto the series, I was kind of like, wow, I really like this guy's, take, and I'd love to interview him one day. Not thinking that I actually would, and then, it happened. So,
super great guy. I met him first time September of 2019 at a book event, and then subsequently I've gotten together, I think, one other time at a conference. We hung out, had a drink, and had some laughs, and just solid guy. Really good to talk to.
Well, this whole community, the author community, is like really supportive, and that I mean, it's not surprising now, but like initially, I was thinking, well, everyone's trying to get out different books, and you would think it would be a little more competitive, but it's really, there might be a few friendly bands here and there, but mostly everyone's very supportive. So
there's always outliers, and I think I've talked about it a lot in my podcast and different interviews. Is that was the thing that surprised me the most. I thought there'd be a lot of competition, and kind of. I'm sure there's some stabbing that happens in the back and other things. You hear some stuff here and there, you hear stories, but by and far the general consensus is most authors treat each other like gems, basically. Very, very, very well.
Yeah, well, I've tended to notice that like a lot of the people who, for instance, like when I first started, I got a few, remarks from people who were like, oh, well, they were really dismissive because at the time I was, I was young and I didn't have any life experience. So, how could I write, a book like that? And meanwhile, like, they haven't really published anything, and a lot of them have kind of, given up because they didn't take it seriously, whereas like a lot of the authors who, do take this seriously, like yourself and, countless others who we could both name, are all very, supportive of whoever wants to come into this field. So
everyone is welcome as long as you can tell a story, and even if you tell a lousy story, you're still welcome. You probably won't get to tell, well, you can tell as many as you like. You might not sell many copies, but yeah, it's very, yeah. But like I said, by and far, it's a great community, and there's no entry. There's no entry fee. There's no requirement. You can have a 12-year-old write a book and it get published, and you can have a 92-year-old write a book and get published. There's, it's actually amazing how large the gap is there. It's not like LeBron or professional athletes where, okay, you got, football, take NFL. You got 4 years if you're lucky. If you're lucky, you get 4 years in the NFL, and that's your career. You better put that money aside, and you better make some smart decisions. You better make sure your posse of 40 people is not actually, it doesn't exist, because you're going to burn through that money fast. But for writing, you can definitely make a long career out of it. Trying to make money like NFL is a little more difficult, but that does happen to a few as well. A very few, but it happens.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing too is, this certainly happened in my case, and also, with Travis Davis and other people I've talked to, where, you put out a good, first book that, has some issues, maybe because it's your first release, as all books do. But, one of the things that I've certainly noticed, at least for me, and I'm kind of curious to, know your thoughts on this, especially, with Supreme Justice, is like I've noticed that with every book, I get better writing. My stories. I always try to, tighten up, my words a little bit and kind of just hone my skills and even more. And I'm kind of, curious. Do you feel like your I guess craft has kind of changed, or how do you feel now about like the process of writing now versus 2021 when you first published the Body Man and were
much more comfortable, I think, probably in my own skin, just going through some life experiences, getting older, getting more gray hairs. But the more you write, if you do take it seriously, the more you learn during the process, whether it's grammar, whether it's how to say something more concise. You get better at it traditionally, and that's what you should be aiming for. So yeah, I feel much better now in 2025 than I did in 2021, or even when I started in 2014 is when I took it serious, where I wrote my first novel. I didn't know what I was doing at that point, and I know that now. I look back at what I did, and I was like, "What were you thinking?" Yeah, it's the process for me has changed a lot. There's a lot of things that have obviously, it's 11 years later, matured a lot, at least in some areas, and yeah, just a lot more life experiences to draw on for the writing, which is really good.
Well, that's awesome. So kind of getting into Supreme Justice a bit, I know that this book focuses more on, Merce Deotta.
Mm-hmm.
I never know if I'm pronouncing that last name correct or not, so I apologize.
I suggest you get it right because she's an assassin, so I would get her name right if I were you.
Yeah. So,
with very little conscience, so she could easily fly down to Florida and she could hunt you down pretty quick.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Well, she might have to contend with Jason Miller or John Ryder first, but
She likes her chances.
Yeah. So,
Kidding.
but anyway, so this book, focuses a bit more on her character. So did you always have the plan to dive further more into her story, or I guess jump into Supreme Justice a little bit? What was your inspiration for this
Sure.
chapter in the Body Man saga?
I'll try to give you the very short version. So when I wrote The Body Man and started pitching it and, getting rejections and all that stuff happened, and a lot of people read it and, oh yeah, you're going to get a publishing deal. And then I didn't get one for years. The comment that I had gotten from a lot of people early on, prior to 2021 when it got published, was they really liked the characters. And the most common character apart from The Body Man I got positive things from was Merci. They're like, man, there's something to that character. Like, ooh, do you have like a whole story for her? And I'm like, I don't even know her background. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know her background? It's like, I just created some hot chick that was an assassin and killed people and killed the president, basically. So just a very one-dimensional, she got in, did what she needed to do, and that was the thought process. So it kind of kept twirling around my head for a while. Fast forward to 2020, I'm in the middle of a divorce, and I hadn't yet got the contract for The Body Man, but I had had a lot of people read it, a couple years before. And and I've mentioned this on my podcast, I guess recently, the day mediation took place, which was required by the court for my divorce. I walked out of the law office not far from here in Spartanburg, and I just felt this weight come off me. I hadn't written that year. I hadn't kept anything I wrote that year. And I wanted to write that night because I kind of knew I had some peace with stuff. I knew where my future was going to look like. And I went back to Merci because I had figured out that year what her backstory was. I hadn't written any of it, but I figured it out in my head. So I sat down. It was middle of December 2020. And I started writing what I was planning to be was a standalone for her. And the title of that book, of what it was going to be, is still in Supreme Justice, and it's Put Her Down. Bad title for a book, but at the time there was a whole concept that I was thinking through.
Yeah.
And I wrote about 30,000 words, 25 to 35, I can't remember now. I wrote, a third of a book. And that led all the way up until the day I got the book contract for The Body Man. And as soon as I got that contract, I put Mercy's story aside. Body Man got published in 2021. I had to deliver a second book, so I wrote Breach of Trust. So she was really on the back burner. And it wasn't until I was getting Breach of Trust ready for publication through my own imprint that I was like, well, where am I going next with this? And I had an idea for the next Body Man book, but Mercy's story kept coming back to me. So I started going back to it thinking, okay, I'll just do a one-off standalone for her. Well, as I started writing that going back to it last year, I realized I kept pulling the Body Man into the story. And then I kind of just did something kind of radical that probably traditional publishing would say, you can't do this, but I can do whatever I want since I'm indie publishing. I decided that the end of Breach of Trust, instead of going straight into the next book is going to become the fourth book. Mercy's story is going to come in, and the events happening right after Breach of Trust are taking place in Mercy's story, Supreme Justice with the Body Man. And they'll also come to fruition in the next Body Man book, which is called Downfall, which will be next summer. So what you see in some of the spots in Supreme Justice are also taking place in Downfall, and you'll get more of the details. You'll get a conclusion of what's happening. Because I wrote an author's note at the end of Supreme Justice because I said, I'm going to get some nasty grams from people saying, whoa, you started all these things with the Body Man, you didn't tie him up. And I'm like, well, yeah, I didn't tie him up because that's the next Body Man book. So yeah. I was able to integrate, I think, successfully from what my early readers told me, both stories, where you had Mercy's standalone story with the Supreme Court, but you also had all the stuff happening with the Body Man after Breach of Trust.
Yeah, that's very interesting to take on. So that's kind of, in an interesting way, that's kind of what happened with the Jason Miller character who I have, and
gotcha.
Night of the Vigilante. When I came up with him, he was kind of meant to be a side character who was just going to, get killed off, at some point. And I kind of came up with him as kind of like a not really, I wouldn't say a joke character, but
Yeah.
I'm a big Clint Eastwood fan and
Mhm.
of the spaghetti westerns, and I'm like, it would be cool to have just like a one-off side character with a poncho and
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
Stetson kind of in the modern. So I kind
Right.
of plan to, have him be a one-off character, and then one of the beta readers at the time was like, I really like this side character. When is his, not book coming out? And I'm like, I was gonna kill him off like, you know, at the end of this one, and they were like, no, you can't do that. So then kind of at the end of the third Shadows of Deception novel, I kind of had writer's block for where I wanted that story to go, and I'm like,
Okay.
I think there might be something to this character,
Mhm.
so I kind of did what you did and kind of tied the two characters together and gave them a little bit more of a backstory. And um, it's it's always interesting because um, what I've kind of noticed is when I'm at least when I'm writing, um, my stories tend to kind of deviate not too horribly, but they tend to deviate more from what I like had outlined,
Mhm.
initially. And I'm kind of seems like that might be the same thing with you with your universe, where you start out, in one direction, and then maybe end up maybe not somewhere else entirely, but different than you had initially thought too.
Yes, I don't outline. So I have my process has changed over the years. So now my phone, the devil machine here, which controls most of our lives, I've got a notes section there. And so when I have a thought on, like I have it with Downfall now, since I'm working on Downfall, when I have a thought, I'll just go and put a paragraph in there of like, hey, we need this to happen or we need that to happen during the story. So I'll make a note. And then what I do is before I sit down to write, I'll go back and review those notes, especially if I've kind of put them together for a year before I started writing something. But I kind of know mentally where I want to start every story, and I almost know where I want to go at the end. I have an idea
Yeah,
get go. All the middle, 75% of the novel, I have no clue. I figure it out as I'm going along. I might look back at some of my notes and go, yeah, that was a good idea. No, that wasn't a good idea. Um, I can't work off an outline. Maybe I can. You interviewed Kyle. I interviewed Kyle and talked to him the other recently. Kyle does like, or at least for the rap books, he did like 40,000 word outlines, and he had it in a spot
yeah,
where he could basically get up in the morning and say, let's write chapter 23 today, just randomly. And he could go to his outline and he could go get the big detail on chapter 23 and he could write that chapter because his outline was so detailed. He spent so much time figuring it out ahead of time. Maybe I can do that one day, but I think if I did that currently, if I tried to, I'd be bored out of my mind. No
yeah,
desire.
yeah. I'm very much the same way as far as like I don't really outline that much either. In general, the one thing I have done, because I like you, I kind of keep bullet point notes, in the notes app on my
Mhm.
phone. The one thing I do is, kind of put the ideas into, ChatGPT or something that can kind of format it as like a loose outline
Sure.
and maybe use those ideas when I'm writing the first draft. I don't really stick to it. Like you, I've made all sorts of changes, and I mean, I think it's been very interesting interviewing all these authors, at least for me to
Mhm.
kind of know how everyone's brain works and what everyone's different writing style is, because it's really different for each
Mhm.
author. I mean, you can read all sorts of how to write a thriller novel for dummies or something like that,
Right.
but there's no one approach that works well for all of us. Otherwise, we would all do that one
Yeah.
thing and make millions and millions of dollars.
Well,
So
we're all such different people. I interviewed Ryan Pote the other day, and interesting guy. I'd never really interacted with him on social media
yeah,
or anything. And he gets up and writes in the morning. So he gets up at like 4 in the morning and writes from 4 to 7. That's his time to write. He can get done what he needs to do. If I had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you'd have like the letter A across a couple paragraphs, and
Yeah.
probably curse words like, I want to blank and sleep right now. I don't want to be writing a stupid story. So I write at night. Now, I do write during the day sometimes, but not that often. Normally, my writing is at night. Other people, they can't write at night. They got to sleep at, go to bed at 9 or 10 o'clock. So, it just works so different. I think writing is kind of like a fingerprint. Each person, there's a unique thing about each writer.
Yeah, well, and then for me, I think I might have shared this with you when I was on your show, but because I have a physical disability, I use text to speech for
Sure.
For the vast majority of my writing, not just creatively, but like in college and business stuff and whatnot. So, I mean, it's pretty good at like auto punctuating and whatnot, but I'll usually write my first draft and then go in and punctuate all that later. And I mean, I can type a little bit, but that's, I mean, literally my approach to, writing, or I guess typing, is, different than a lot of people's. And
Sure.
I mean, it's, even stuff like that. Like I know people who write novels on their phone. I don't know how anyone would want to, I don't know how anyone, why would anyone, even if you have like a bigger phone, that's still a pretty small keyboard to type on.
I interviewed a lady in England earlier this year, and she wrote her
Yeah.
whole first novel on her phone. And then you have people like Mark Cameron, Adam Hamdy, who write by hand. So I've told the
Yeah.
story before. I was in New York years ago for a conference, and I was hanging out with Adam, and he was writing with James Patterson at the time, still is. And he said, "Would you like to see some of what I've been writing with Patterson?" Yeah, absolutely. So we go up to the room. He had a book for me to sign. So he had he signed the book with like a quill pen, like old school, like, he was living in like the 1700s. He was still British. So I think he's still pissed about the whole tea incident, in Boston. So he's got this quill pen he's writing with.
Yeah.
And so he pulls out this book and he's like, "Here's the Patterson book." And I flip it open, and and Adam is a great guy. He's a good friend. It looked like hieroglyphics to me. I was like, "What the heck is this?" He goes, "That's my writing." I'm like, "I can't read a word." He goes, "Well, good. You don't want you to read it." But no, he handwrites. So what he does is he handwrites his first draft of whatever he's working on, and then he brings it into the computer, and that becomes kind of his first edit. So again, whatever works for you. I know Mark Cameron writes with certain kind of pencils, only certain pencils he uses. So he used notepads and pencil and paper. Just stuff that, man, if I had to go back and read my writing, 2 months later, I don't think I'd be able to decipher one of every 4 words I wrote, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, no, same here. I mean, yeah, my if I had to write by hand, I would never have gotten a book published.
Right.
And like even with like, I know some authors, they like to have like I know one guy who likes to still use a typewriter. That props to you if you're in that goat where you can, use a typewriter, but that seems like it would be, an interesting process.
Most certainly. I'm laptop and Microsoft Word still. I've talked about going to Scrivener and other things over the years, or switching, and so far it works for me. And I think that's the ultimate thing, is you find what works for you, because unfortunately a lot of times what happens is not laziness, but your brain will a lot of times try to talk you out of anything hard, and writing a book is hard. So if your brain can you don't really want to handwrite this, or you don't want to type, that's hard. You don't dictation doesn't work well. I think you give yourself a lot of excuses why you don't do something. So you have to find a way to make it work so that you can do the work, basically get the job done.
Yeah. So in regards to Supreme Justice, as far as where the story goes, I mean, I won't ask for too many specific details, but kind of what is a good, I guess, general synopsis for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you, the first chapter of the book, Merci is up the road from where I live now. She's up at the Grove Park Inn in Asheville, North Carolina, which is a really cool hotel. I was up there a couple months ago, get some photos with the book and stuff. I think Omni owns it, the Omni Grove Park Inn. and she's killing the husband of a Supreme Court justice. So why is she killing the husband of a Supreme Court justice? Well, a landmark case is about to hit the Supreme Court in the next month or so, and you have 4 judges on one side who are going to vote one way, and it's set that they're going to vote that way. You have 4 judges that are going to vote the opposite. And you have 1 judge in the middle. And powers that be, that you have to read the book to figure out what's going on, why they're doing this, is they decide they're going to force the vote their way. So what if we go after this judge's family and you have some leverage against her? So in chapter 1, Merci kills her husband. Doesn't work as well as they thought it was going to. So that kind of starts a whole cascade of events that lead pretty much around the world, but mainly in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of stuff going on in Washington, but there's a global touch to this to the story for sure.
Yeah. So that's a very, interesting premise. Do you?
I do want to say one other thing, because I've had this question already. Like, people want to know about the case. What's the case about? Because I don't go into really specific details about the case, because that's not what the story's about.
Right.
But I will say this: if you read the story, the name of the case that's brought before the Supreme Court should tell you what that case is about. And if you can't figure out the case is about, heaven help you.
Yeah, I've kind of had that, thing happen too, where, where I reference like certain events, but I don't name them outright.
Yeah.
And it's like, are people, and I'll get questions, and I'm like, well, just spend, you seem intelligent, so just, maybe spend a few minutes online. And I think it's, it's pretty telling, maybe where I'm going with this or that. The thing that's interesting now is, just when I think I'm running out of story ideas, there's all sorts of stuff on the news, for better or for worse, that, gives me plenty of ideas.
Let's see, in the last month, we've had a near global war start because of the Middle East. We've bombed Iran, which I thought was going to be a precursor. I think I interviewed Kyle Mills 2 days into that, 2 days or 1 day into what was happening. It was all happening right around that time. And I said to him, I was like, this isn't airing for a month. Like, we could all be like dust by then or something.
Yeah.
Like, this might turn into the global, this might turn into nuclear winter here. And we just laughed about it, but it was a weird time. And then you had all the crap going on now with Epstein files. Like, hey, we got a list. No, we didn't really have a list. There's nothing else to talk about now. You just like, you can't make this stuff up, man. I will continue to follow the news and continue to be informed because I need to be. But in some ways, it's just like, I don't know what the purpose is anymore, because tomorrow it's going to be the opposite of what you heard today. It's just wild, man. Wild.
Yeah, well, that's like too that I get asked a lot is, like, why don't you cover this, that, or the other thing? And I mean, I do, but like as far as like, the Middle East, like, John Ryder's love interest works for the Mossad. And so, based on conversations I've had with people, who I know over in Israel, like I've had talks with them. And the thing with it is when you're trying to cover some of those aspects as a storyteller, it's difficult because you might write something one way and then in reality, something cuts the complete, opposite way. So there's no easy way to cover, foreign events like that. And so props to anyone who does,
Yeah, and some of the big ones do, the Brad Thors, Brad Taylor. And I think I saw something the other day. I know Brad Taylor. I've never met Brad Thor, but I've spent time with Brad Taylor a couple times. I think Brad Taylor was getting ready to turn his book in for next year. And I think he had to go make changes because of what happened with them taking out the Iran nuclear facilities. I think he posted something about that, if I recall. That's the danger of going, of taking because what most, and these guys are brilliant writers. They're a lot of these guys have military backgrounds where they kind of know how to read intelligence. And so they're kind of looking at the tea leaves, what's happening now, and making an educated guess of, I think this is what's going to happen in 12 months. Because from their perspective, when you're traditionally published, you're turning a book in normally a year out. Sometimes you can get away with 6 months if you're like a Jack Carr or someone bigger. But maybe Daniel Silva turns them in pretty late too, I believe. But for the most part, you're turning a book in way out there. So if you submitted a book last summer and it said, "Hey, the U.S. president is not gonna touch Iran with a 10-foot pole. Those nuclear facilities are safe," and that book was supposed to come out in August of this year of 2025. Well, poop. Guess what? Your book from a year ago that you wrote is no longer valid. At least that part of it. That's
Right.
you're in trying to Nostradamus what's going to happen in a year. So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, even like every 6 months, like like I did for the first Shadows of Deception arc. I mean, I you know in at the end of the Fourth Estate, my president, there's an assassination attempt on him, and then 6 months later, someone actually tried to take a shot at Trump.
Yeah.
I never saw that forecoming.
Sam,
At
were you
all.
near a golf course last year with a rifle? What's going
No,
on here?
no. The funny thing is, though, is that like I do have, my best friend actually works in DC, and he's told me a couple of times that like, he's told me, he's like, for a civilian, you're actually pretty in tune with what's going on, and it's like, well, I attribute that partially to my imagination, and it's very vivid, but some of these things, for better for worse, they kind of seem to telegraph themselves
Right.
sometimes.
Yeah, they do, absolutely. Well, again, I think if you have a good imagination, if you keep track of news, and you kind of can just make some educated guesses on what stupid things people will do, or brilliant things sometimes people do, because the way they put things together sometimes is quite brilliant. Then I think your stories end up sometimes imitating life because of those facts. Yeah, you want to make sure if you go that direction, you are careful that your book's not dated quickly. If again, back to the nuclear thing or something.
Right. Yeah. Kind of going back to the character of Merci. Do you ever? This is actually a question that I've gotten kind of before to ask you, and I think it's a good one. But do you ever give any thought to writing female characters as a a gentleman yourself? Does that ever? I guess. Do you ever have trouble like writing female characters or anything like that, or trying to get into her mindset, or how does that work?
Just go through a divorce, and you can kind of figure out some horrible things that women can do to men, and then you get some of it down. So.
Yeah.
No, no, not really. I got a mom, I have a sister, I have a daughter. Dated girls over the years, so I think I'm somewhat in tune.
Yeah.
And what the fine line I try to be careful of is I want to make sure I don't fall into some tropes about women or whatever like that. So
Right.
I do walk a fine line, but I do it with the guys too. So my male characters, some of them have some similarities, and some of them are very, very different.
Yeah.
Merci, I wanted to make very complicated because on paper she seems simple, but she's far from simple. And what you find in this story, without giving too much of it away, is that you would think someone of her standing, of things that she's done in life, has very low morals. You would think she's willing to kill anyone for money, and that's not the case. She's very targeted about who she goes after, and she has lines she won't cross, and that's what kind of makes a big plot point in Supreme Justice. Is she's asked to cross a line and expected to cross a line, and how will she react to that line being crossed? And so I like the complexity of the characters, and to me, they're not real people. They don't really hear them talk or anything like that, but I try to make them as real. And there's a lot of emotion,
Right.
this book. I've gotten already some of the early readers already gave me some feedback, and they were like, "Yo, you choked me up," and I'm like, "Good," because it choked me up when I wrote that scene, and every time I read it, I choke up too. So
Yeah.
Trying to put that humanity into it, whether it's male or female characters, is a fun side of writing that you get to participate in.
Yeah, I only asked the question because I've been asked that question, and to me, I'm kind of like, well, I don't really look at, I don't necessarily think of, characters as strictly male versus female, or even like, things like, writing an African American character or anything like that. Like, yeah, there might be certain aspects that I, bring up, but like I try and, at the end of the day, we do have our differences, but we all also at the end of the day deal with, a lot of the same stuff too,
Sure.
regardless of, background. And so, when I write characters, I try and, look at, well, who would be best to deal with this type of situation for this chapter. And I don't know, like you said, your characters are fiction, but I almost feel kind of like, this might sound weird, but when writing some of my characters, I feel like I kind of get to know them more as people when writing.
Absolutely. It's not weird at all.
And yeah, Steve, and that was something that Steve Stratton, brought up too, which was, when he first started writing, the Beowulf character, the Lance Beowulf character, like he only had maybe like a page of details about, the character because he didn't know much about Lance Beowulf when he wrote the first one. And now he's got like several pages.
Yeah.
And he knows a lot more of that character now. And I imagine you kind of feel the same way about like a lot of your characters too.
Yeah, so when I first started in 2014, I had, and I still have them, they're in the other room, I did a pretty detailed bio on every character I wrote. I've gotten away from that in the last couple books. Certain characters, I write certain things down. Some of it I just have in my head. But yeah, I want to know as much. Like when I wrote my Troy Evans character back in 2014, I knew what his favorite sports teams were, what kind of beer he drank, what he liked on his pizza. And part of that was I would then implement or integrate that into the writing. And with, like I said earlier, with Merci, she was very one-dimensional. So back in 2020, and it's crazy to think it was that long ago that I actually kind of dived into her that deep. But back in 2020, I had to figure her out. And part of figuring her out was like, why would you have this attractive woman who keeps herself in great shape? Why would she tone her body and perfect the act of killing? Because it's psychotic. There's no way around it. You're a psychopath if you do that.
Yeah.
Unless you have a good reason to do it. So I had to give her a good reason. And that's what gets revealed in Supreme Justice. There's a chapter that takes place, and I have no idea now. It's earlier in the book. I can't remember what chapter number it is off the top of my head. I should know. I read it so many times in the last 6 months. But she, her backstory comes out basically of where she came from. I hint of what happened to her younger that kind of started her on that path. And then a little bit later in the story, she's in Paris with Marcus, who's her I call him her handler, but it's just a significant other. They have a relationship much beyond working. They have a love story as well. And she sees someone from her past in Paris, and she's set off. Marcus tries to quell the beast, basically. Like, you can't do this. We're in Paris. There's cameras. There's this and that. And there's a side of her that can't be controlled, and that side of her comes out. And that scene actually got a lot of good feedback from early readers of like, yo, I liked what you did in Paris. And I did a lot of that stuff that takes place in that chapter. Not what she did, obviously. But I went to those places. I saw those stuff. And I was younger. I was like 19. So that was a long time ago. I'm an old man now. That was 29 years ago I did that. I guess I wrote it probably 27 years ago, 26 years ago. Or when I wrote it, it was a 26 or 27 year gap. But I was able to be in those scenes. So when I could put Merci there, I was able to draw a somewhat off memory of being there. And then I also have a lot of trip. So that's kind of a fun part too, where I was able to put her in this high action scene and realized that I actually went down those same streets, and I was at the Arc de Triomphe just like she was. I just didn't happen to end it the way she ended that scene, or I would be in jail and I wouldn't have written all these stories. So
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that. There's a scene in Sins of the Assassin where Jason Miller goes out to Colorado for an op, something, and I grew up in Denver, and I sent the chapter to a friend to kind of look over it. It's funny because he said, "Well, dude, you referenced a place, and that place is no longer there anymore." And I'm like, what? That place always used to be there. And he's like, well, you haven't been here in, so long. So I mean, that's the other thing that happens with locations is, things change, and
they change quickly sometimes. So so like I mentioned, Grove Park Inn is where chapter 1 takes place here. In chapter 3, after Merci kills the husband of the Supreme Court Justice, she goes down the road about 25 miles to Hendersonville, downtown Hendersonville, North Carolina, where I used to live, where I had an office up until about 3.5 years ago. I had an office in Hendersonville for multiple years. And so I brought the characters down. I'm actually going to go up there and talk to some of the store owners and stuff. And I might even do a book signing at one of the locations up there where I had some action take place. But I wanted to it was an area that I walked like 5 days a week. Every day I would walk during my lunch break or in the evenings after work. So I kind of knew these areas very intimately. And I was like, I want to bring my characters there. So my office at the time was this place above Sir Tom's Tobacco Euphorium. It was a tobacco place. So my kids would come to my office and I always be like, Dad, I smell cigars. This is stinky. And I got used to it. So I didn't smell them half the time.
Right.
So I had Marcus and Merci walk by that store. And I wrote this a while ago, probably a year ago, was this particular scene anyways. And they noticed an air conditioner up above Sir Tom's that looks a little sketchy. That was the air conditioner in my office, which wasn't sketchy. I think I put it in, so I hope it was
right.
Well, I was walking by there a couple months ago to get some photos and to talk to some folks, and I looked, and Sir Tom's isn't Sir Tom's anymore. Like, just in the last year, it changed its name, and I was like, well, darn, it's going to stay Sir Tom's because that's what it was when I was there, and my character.
Right, yeah.
So, but it was just kind of cool to put some locations in there of places, and most of the locations are still there. Yeah, just as a nod of places I've lived, and it gives a little authenticity to, I think, to the story again, that you have a real place. And I hope people go to Hendersonville. Downtown is really nice, and they can enjoy Umi Sushi and have a beer at Dry Falls and go to Carl Sandburg and do a hike like the characters did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, it's always funny too, like because like I've written car chase scenes, in some of my books. Like there are a couple scenes where like I had a car chase in New York City, but then I went back there recently and to New York myself, and I'm like, yeah, there's no way that this would actually happen in New York because traffic is, gridlocked from here to Midtown. So that's the other funny thing is like with movies, whatnot. There are always car chases where there wouldn't actually be a car chase in real life because traffic and whatnot. So
I have a scene. One of the main characters and one of the main story plots here in Supreme Justice, they have an office at One World Trade, which I've been to One World Trade several years back. And so they need to get to a spot up on the east side of Central Park. And I've been there and I've done those drives. I've actually rode a bike from Chelsea all the way to the end of Central Park and back. I don't know how many miles that is. I told the people when I brought the bike back, they're like, you rode to where? I was like, hell yeah, I was driving down Broadway. They're like, and you're still alive? I'm like, oh, it's great, man. But I had to get the characters over there in the story, and I'm like, okay, I think they would go this road. So I Googled it. I got on Google Maps, and to go straight like down Broadway or whatever direction it took me through Midtown was going to be a lot longer than if you just came out of One World Trade and kind of went around the south part of Manhattan and then up like the JFK the Parkway, the road there. So that's how I brought my character. And my character basically says like, yeah, I know how to get around New York. I'm taking the quick route. I'm taking the expressway versus the tourists would go through Midtown. So just stuff like that.
Yeah, it's always fun, like people watching too, especially like in New York, and
A lot to choose from there.
yeah, like there were some native New Yorkers who were saying something like, I can't believe that there's like a Westfields at One World Trade now, which there is. There's literally like a small mall at
It's
One World
not too,
Trade.
yeah, it's not too small either. It's a decent sized
No,
mall.
no, I was just in there, and
Yeah.
so yeah, like I had one of my characters who's from New York, talk about that. Like I can't believe that there's been this, much tourism or something.
Well,
Just little.
I might have. Did I text you and message you and tell you to go to Italy? To
Yeah,
have, yes,
which I did, and
which is a great place to eat, but it's
yeah.
kind of wild that it's there.
So yeah, I mean, just things like that, little Easter eggs I find are always fun to insert in books like that. So
yeah, absolutely. I try to put as many things in there that I've experienced. Obviously, that just can't be the case with all the global things I like to do. And
right.
I'd love to be like a Mark Greaney one day and go, hey, I'm going to write my book and have part of it be in Hong Kong and in this city and that city, and then just go to those places. It's just maybe, but economically at this point. Now with this one, I did do some travel for it. I did. I knew where I was going with part of the book, and I knew I needed to get to Ireland. So I ended up taking my mom, and my mom and I went over Thanksgiving. I didn't have my kids this last week for this past Thanksgiving for a week, and took my mom over to there. And since we were going to be over there, we also went to London and so to England, and also to Edinburgh, Scotland.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you texted me a photo from the St. James Gate Brewery there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanksgiving Day, I was pouring Guinness in the St. James Gate, and I had Guinness stew after that for good. I didn't have turkey last year for Thanksgiving, and 2 years for another, not this year, but the following year, I'll go somewhere else, and I won't have Thanksgiving dinner. I'll be in a different country for that one. So
yeah, I mean, I like the Thanksgiving turkey as much as the next guy, but sometimes you do need a break from turkey. So
yeah, well, for me, part of that too is just mentally. I kind of made this deal with myself when I was going through the divorce or right after the divorce, just because it was such a hard time. And again, a lot of people have gone through it, so it's not a woe is me. But I knew every other year I wouldn't have my kids. And I think the first year it happened, maybe when I was separated, I went to a friend's house for Thanksgiving, maybe, I think. But I just made a deal, and it was great. It was wonderful that my friends did that for me. But my kids were just down the road. And I was like, man, I don't want to be just for my kids on Thanksgiving Day. And I don't want to have to exchange custody time if I want to see them for an hour on Thanksgiving. So I mentally made a deal with myself that said, okay, from now on, every year you don't have the kids. 2 things: leave the country, don't be in the United States on Thanksgiving Day, and spend Thanksgiving Day in a country you've never been in. So I'm 2 for 2 in the last 3.5 years, where it's Wales and Ireland over those 2 Thanksgivings. I think the next one coming up in a year and a half will probably be Brazil. I might do Brazil for Thanksgiving, and then every 2 years. And my son's going off to college, my daughter's 4 years from that age, so they're getting to a point where custody is not even an issue before too long anyways. But I think I'll keep that going. I'm going, every 2 years, because it's not Thanksgiving when you go somewhere else, so it just mentally makes it easier to know that you're not celebrating necessarily Thanksgiving, you're just seeing some cool sights, and you're almost not thinking about the holiday that much.
Yeah, that always, I think especially like the international world traveling, I mean, that's cool, you can do that, but it's also, I guess, helpful for you as far as, like we just mentioned, but, scouting out locations that you might want to use, in your book,
I won't say where it is in the book. I don't want to give it away, but there is a scene that takes place at Blarney Castle in Ireland where one character will kiss the Blarney Stone and the other won't, and that becomes a minor plot point. But I get into it what happens with it.
Yeah,
that was real. We got up to the top of the Blarney Castle, and you have to. it can be very challenging to do it, especially if someone has a disability. You're not going to be able to get up there. It's very narrow. But if you can get up to the top of the castle, what you have to do is lay on your back. I have a picture of it over on the wall over here. You have to lay on your back. You have to grab behind you and grab these black bars, and you have to lean backwards. And the stone is basically under something. So you have to lean backwards and then lean up a little bit to kiss the stone. So physically, and they'll help you. There's workers there, 2 guys on either side that will kind of hold your body. So, and you're not going to fall. Or
Right.
not probably, unless you're an asshole, and they'll probably let the assholes fall. But Mom wouldn't do it. And I don't 71 at the time. I didn't give her grief for not doing it, but I'm like, that's going to be a plot point because I'm going to do it. I didn't come all the way here to not kiss that stone. And before I went, people were like, people piss on that stone and all this stuff. I'm like, man, I'll be fine. I'll use Listerine after. I don't care. It'll be a quick peck. Whatever. And I don't believe they actually do that. It's pretty well kept. And it was raining while we were there anyway. So I'm like, it's all washing away whatever's on here.
Right.
So.
Funny.
I'll say this real quick too. Funny enough, I had a buddy. One of my closest friends was just there with his family a couple weeks ago, and he wasn't planning on going to Blarney Castle. And I was like, dude, it's a big plot point. It's a plot point in my story. You need to go to Blarney Castle. They were in Ireland for 2 weeks. Go to the stupid castle. It's gorgeous. Gets there, texts me calls me when he gets back, and I was like, so did you go? He goes, yeah. I was like, all right. He goes, I didn't kiss the stone. What do you mean you didn't kiss the stone? You went all the way there. And he goes, it was a 2.5 hour wait to get up to the stone. I was like, dude, I just walked up to the stone and kissed it. There was no wait when I went.
Right.
I wouldn't have waited 2.5 hours either. I would have just made up a different story.
So. Well, that's always the thing too, is like, in like everyone wants to know when they come to Florida, like, yo, can we go to Disney? And it's like, well, we could, but the ticket prices are, this, and then you have to spend, like even during the summer now, it's crazy, like how there's still like really long lines.
I saw something the other day. It was $183 for a daily ticket for an adult to get into Disney, and that was no fast passes or anything. That was standard ticket for 1 day. Well, not even a hopper pass. Hopper pass was $2 something. I was like, what for Disney?
Yeah, no, I've never actually been, but at this point I'm also like, I'm not really sure if I want to, because it's just, you have to fight crowds a lot of the time now.
I saw this clip the other day. It was a mother talking about her experience on a Disney cruise, and she didn't say how much she spent, but she kind of went through the 7-day cruise and how food was subpar. This part was great. The lines were horrible to get in shows or to get food. There was always lines. Well, then the video ended, and then the next day or whatever, I was wasting time flipping around on social media. Well, she had a part 2, and part 2 was the cost. Base cost for her Disney cruise for, I think, her husband, and 3 kids was $16,000. Plus, they spent another like $3,500 or $3,700 between alcohol and excursions and other stuff. It was $20,000, and it wasn't like a stateroom, gorgeous. I was like,
yeah,
what? Are you crazy?
Yeah, it's yeah. I see some of the figures for that, and it's like, my wheelchair that I use, which is pretty nice, is almost the same price, if not even a little cheaper than than some of these Disney
my last Accord that I just got rid of and traded in for a new one, I bought, I don't know, whatever year I bought that, 2017. I think it was like $14,000 for a Honda Accord. And I drove the thing for 7 years and put 300,000, or I had miles on it before I got it, so I put another 250 probably, but 300,000 almost when I turned it in and traded up. So, but that was like $14,000 for a vehicle that I drove for 7+ years.
Yeah.
Insane.
So
a lot of books to go on a Disney cruise for 20 G's, let me just say.
Yeah, well, I mean, and even like a lot of the authors that you and I know, I'm not sure, like even some of the ones who are more successful, I'm not sure that you would want to, I think you might want to invest that money in something else, unless you really have the money, to
Well, I think the dirty secret on that, and I talk about it in my podcast because I'll be open about stuff. And I don't talk about anyone in particular because it's not, even if I know particular, it's none of my business to ever talk about someone's personal stuff. But there's people out there that you think, oh, they're probably doing really well. They're making the New York Times bestseller list. There's a high probability the UPS guy who's delivering the books to that New York Times bestseller makes more money or makes equivalent money. And so that person might be number 15 on the New York Times bestseller list. They're not making millions of dollars. They're not even making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're earning a decent income. But what ends up happening with a lot of the authors that are actually able to do this full time is they have a spouse that makes good money or a significant other that makes good money, or they have a pension. Might be this, this might be a career they're doing after they worked full time, a full career. It's kind of rare. It's not unheard of, but it's fairly rare to be able to make a really solid income as an author.
Well, and when I talked to Kyle Mills yesterday, I mean, we didn't get too much into this aspect, but he did say, he's like, I've made decent money, from writing, but as far as authors out there, I'm mid tier, which is still pretty good, but I'm not making Stephen King money, or anything like that. And that's.
Well, let's take the Kyle as an example, and I don't know any of Kyle's details, but I know enough about the way the industry works. Is Kyle was writing for a legacy series for a while.
Yeah.
So he was writing under the Vince Flynn family. So the Flynn estate obviously is getting a portion of it, probably a large portion of it. The publisher always gets the majority of what comes in for sales. So as an author, your piece on that. So I said it recently to someone about this is, if you sell 10,000 books, that's pretty good. That's not great. I mean, the big name authors sell hundreds of thousands of books, but 10,000 books is a solid amount of books. If you're with a big publisher, 10,000 books sold is probably like 20,000 bucks for you. And that's all you get out of that for like a full year. Who can live on $20,000? And, especially if you live somewhere like New York or San Francisco or, really high cost, living places. So yeah, it's negative when you look at it that way. But I guess the way I look at it and where it doesn't bum me out is I go, man, I didn't start doing this because, I'm not dumb. I'd love for them to pull a dump truck up every now and then and be like, hey, Mr. Bishop, here's your royalties. And just me go be like, just watch this money fly out of the back of this truck.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll take that. It's not why I do it. I do it and tell stories. If I can make money doing it, good. I don't want to lose money on it for sure. So I do treat it like a business. But I'm not just I don't write for the market. I don't write because, I think this is the book that's going to make me $100,000 deal or this or that or whatever, $1 million. Nah, it doesn't cross my mind ever. And I don't believe it ever will.
Yeah, no, I was actually explaining that to someone the other day. Like, I wouldn't say I do great as far as sales, but for an indie guy who mostly promotes word of mouth and does podcasts and whatnot, I actually have done, I would say, fairly well. But like you and like others, I work hard on books to write them and promote them, and it is still it's a work of passion, but it is still work. And someone was saying, they're like, man, this would be really, good if you could get this made into a movie or, something like that. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that, but the level of work I have to do, just to put this book out, is pretty intense. You add in, a movie deal, and I can write the screenplay and all that. I've done that before. But then getting into production and all that, there's a level to that like even if I had the money to do it, I'm not sure I would want to. Or even something like adapting it into a comic book. That's the other thing too, is the comic industry, and I know John has a comic book. That's a lot of work too that I don't think people totally realize either. So.
Correct. Yeah. I'm doing comics books with John. So he's Machete Comics. But Machete does, on my end, I will say it's really simple. I write a short story. I send it to Machete Comics. They do everything else. So it's as simple as it can be for me. I don't have to deal with anything. But yeah, it's a lot. I mean, you go to whatever it might be, whatever you try to put out, it's a lot of work. And the other thing I want to follow up too with what you said is, I think we might have talked about this on previous podcasts or on my podcast when you were on talking to me. But if you don't know the market, people are, and not ignorant in a bad way. I don't mean that, but they just don't understand how it works. Is, oh, if you get like an offer for a movie treatment, you're going to be set. It's like, I remember years ago, I was talking to Brad Taylor up in New York about this. And I was like, man, why don't we see a Pike Logan movie? What's going on? I didn't know anything about how it worked. And he was flat out straight up with it. And he's talked about in interviews. That's why I can say it too, is he's been open about it, is they don't offer him enough money and he's not going to be involved in the process for the most part. And they can change any of his characters because you're selling the movie rights away, that if they want to make Pike Logan, Patricia Logan, make it into a female character, they've now changed that character for all movies going forward. Doesn't mean you have to change your book, but they have the rights to do that. Unless you get a really good deal where you retain some creative control. But that is getting published and being a successful writer, like making, 100,000 plus a year, is like hitting the lottery in a way.
Yeah.
Getting creative control over your work being made into a movie is like, you hit the lottery and then you hit it again the next week and then you hit it the week after. It's almost, people get it, but it's so rare. So typically you're signing the books away. You're getting very little money. You're not getting millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars. You might get $10,000. And they have the option for like 3 years, whatever the option deal is of what they sign it for. And then the likelihood of that being greenlit to like made into a series is so minuscule, it's not even funny. I know so many authors that their books got optioned for a TV series or a streaming series or a movie. The amount of ones that they were turned into a series, I don't need more than, the ones that I know, I don't need more than one hand or many fingers on a hand to say how many of them got turned into it. And I know a lot that got optioned. So it's very rare for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle brought this up, yesterday as well, and I've said this too. I admire Jack Carr a lot. I have nothing but respect for him. I think, and this is to actually give him credit, but I think a lot of people, at least from what I've noticed, is they see the success of Jack Carr with, with his books and whatnot. This has happened with like a lot of my friends who, they might be a casual thorough reader. They see someone like me and they see someone like Jack Carr and they think, oh, well, Jack Carr is successful and Sam's incredibly talented. So, he could do what Jack Carr does. And it's like, well, I'm flattered. But at the same time, like, Jack is kind of an outlier as far as like, he was able to get, an Amazon deal pretty, early on in his, career and whatnot. He was able to kind of turn, his, I guess, brand into like a lifestyle thing where he,
Correct.
Has merch and whatnot. Like,
there's nothing wrong with bringing him up and looking at him. And I know Jack, I texted, I communicated with him today. He is the 1% of the 1%. And that's a good thing. And he deserves to be where he's at. No, there's no negative on that.
Yeah.
But if you think you're going to be that next Jack Carr, you probably want to just stop doing whatever it is now, because you're not.
Yeah.
He's so at a different spot, whether it's like you mentioned, merch, or him being executive producer on the shows and all that stuff. That just doesn't happen. Now, it happened for him, but as a general rule, it doesn't happen. So anyone that gets those thoughts of going, well, why doesn't that happen to you? It's like, you don't understand how this works. You don't get how this is.
Yeah.
That's not normal. And you're always very excited when you meet someone and you see that happen to them, because it gives people hope. But keep your hope tempered. Or if not, you're going to be a very disappointed person, more than likely.
Well, and like, that's one thing too. Like, if I were to if I were to like, interview him or have him on the show, like that would be one thing I would, ask him about is kind of, yeah, I mean, he has all that success, but I would also imagine that, he works, I know he works a ton too.
Mhm.
So there's that aspect too, like, you know, yeah, like, you and I might work hard. I know you have a day job, but you and I also have social lives and
Mhm.
whatnot. But when you get to that level, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, when
So
you get to that level, you have to be extremely disciplined. And like, so in Jack's situation, he has multiple agents. He has there's a lot of layers there.
yeah,
Help probably with the social media at this point and that kind of stuff. Because he grew so big. Like when I met him in 2018, um, it was all very new to him. He was new to doing social media. He
yeah.
wasn't really comfortable doing it, and he dived into it because that's what you had to do. And he's a student of when you do something, you do it the right way, and that's a big reason why he's succeeded. A lot of people would probably say, "Well, he got lucky," and I think that's the fault in that process is I don't believe in it, first of all, but I think that's where opportunity meets preparation, or preparation meets opportunity. Either way you want to look at it that way, but that dude doesn't do anything half-ass. Anything he
Yeah.
does is to the T how it needs to be done, and if you want to be successful, that's how you have to do it. And you
Well, and
still fail, but
yeah.
that's how you have to try to do it.
Well, and that's the other thing too is like because I hear that a lot too. Like, even like I'm nobody, but I've been very fortunate to to interview Ben Shapiro and
Mhm.
other notable figures, and people are like, oh well you're lucky, and it's like, well, I might be lucky, but also when opportunities present themselves, I try and seize them, and
Be
when
ready
I
for it.
when I
Yeah,
s- the other thing too is when I started podcasting, nobody knew what it was, and
right.
this was actually something that I feel very fortunate is like I've had other authors reach out to me about coming on the podcast too, because I'm kind of surprised that this medium has worked so well for indie authors to come on and promote, and I'm glad it has.
Hmm.
um but that's another thing that has kind of changed as far as like authors are, even published ones, are promoting a lot more themselves. It's no longer like you get to just disappear for 6 months and to a
100%.
year and
Well,
write.
we
So
both interviewed Kyle. We both talked to Kyle recently, and he's the great example of that. Because when we were talking with him, and I'm pretty sure it was the part that was airing. I think it was when I not because I talked to him a bunch offline as well. But when he did this isn't the first legacy books he wrote for Flynn. He did the same thing for Ludlum.
right,
He wrote the Ludlum books. He literally wrote the book, turned it in, and that was it. It's not that, I mean, he had to do maybe a little press, but it was a little press. There wasn't social media back then. There wasn't all the other stuff. Now that he's out of the legacy system, he's out of the Vince Flynn books, and he's back to doing his own with Fade In. He's a lot more hands on. His wife Kim's helping him do some of the stuff, and because we've talked about it over the last 6 months or so when
yeah,
we talked to each other. He's had to get down in the weeds, and I mean, if you're Brad Thor, if you're Jack Carr, if you're, fill in the blank, Daniel Silva, you're gonna have to get involved if you want to help push your product out there. It's a lot of effort versus there's no such thing anymore. Maybe Stephen King, maybe there's a couple outliers that have to do little to anything and they'll still sell books, but that is so not normal. You have to, and what you'll find with a lot of the bigger ones is they'll come on social media or they'll do podcasts or interviews on major networks a month or so before the book and maybe leading into the book coming out in a month after, and then they'll go disappear again for 10 months. So that definitely happens. But for most indie authors and stuff, it's at least a somewhat regular grind that you have to be putting yourself out there or you'll just get lost in the mix. A lot of the people writing books.
yeah. One of the other things too that like has certainly helped me, and I mean, I imagine for you too is there is investing money in marketing and whatnot, but like I know a lot of authors who I mean, word of mouth ultimately is, a big thing too, and
Yep.
that's the other thing I tell authors is, yeah, I mean, I know some are introverted, and props to you if you are introverted, but
Hmm.
somewhat you have to be willing to kind of, get out there and push your book or whatever your thing may be a little bit because social media marketing only goes so far. You have
Yeah.
to be willing to go out there and push your brand as well.
Yep.
So
Podcasts, do signings if you can line up some signings or some events. Um, yeah,
yeah,
pay for ads. Been doing Facebook ads now for a year and a half solid. I mean, like maybe turn them off here and there for a week, but rare. Typically, I'm doing a daily Facebook ad, and the amounts have varied over the years as I've tried to learn the ads. But yeah, you have to do that just to keep relevant, keep your name out there,
yeah.
to promote
What
it.
is it like? I know you mentioned a book signing earlier. What's that like for you as an indie author and
Yeah, they've been fun. I
doing
haven't done one
that?
in over a year. I'll do a few for Supreme Justice. I haven't lined them up yet. Part of it is with the way, Supreme Justice got done late in the game, which I knew it was gonna because I was doing 2 books last year or getting ready for 2 books and then 2 books again next year. So I'm on this bad cycle right now of just trying to always not drown, trying to get everything done in time. But I didn't want to line up any book events until I had physical books out there, like ready to go. And so
Yeah,
I still haven't ordered them because a book comes out this week, and I leave this weekend for Yellowstone. I'll be gone with the kids and my mom now to Yellowstone. So once I get back, that's when I'll kind of get back in that mode of, okay, let's do some signing events. They're fun. They're fun to do. The downside with them when you're indie is you don't know what kind of crowd you're going to get. I've never had zero, which is great, but I think I had one that was only like 3, and I've had like 20. So you invest a lot into something that you don't know how it's going to turn out. Jack
yeah,
or Brad Meltzer, a lot of the big name authors, yeah, they'll go do a larger events place and they'll get 500 people show up, and they'll
yeah,
sit there for a couple hours and sign. Um, but I remember years ago, Brad Meltzer has been super kind to me over the years. He's become, a writing buddy. He told me in his first book tour, he had one of his events, he showed up and no one was there. He wasn't the Brad Meltzer people know now.
right.
Obviously, first book is only when his first book would come out, but it was him and the bookstore owner, and they went out to dinner because nobody showed up. That is happening. If you talk to a lot of big name authors, they have at least one story of saying they flew somewhere or drove somewhere, went to an event, and nobody came.
Yeah, I mean, I've been like Kyle mentioned yesterday that like he's been in bookstores and nobody's recognized him,
Yeah.
either. Like even though his book is on the shelf and whatnot, that happens. That
Yeah.
happens too a
It
fair
happens
amount.
to the Kyle Mills of the world.
So
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of wild. It's kind of a neat thing with authors because even the ones that get successful have a high degree of anonymity. It's not
yeah,
like George Clooney. It's not like Brad Pitt or Salma Hayek or, Taylor Swift. You have these people that have to have security teams anytime they leave their house because they'll get swarmed at Starbucks or Target
right.
or Walmart. Stephen King probably couldn't walk into the average place without being recognized. And this is not an insult at all, Stephen, if you're listening to the Whitfield report, but Stephen's odd looking, so he stands out, and
Right.
his picture's been out there so much around the country, and he's been sold millions and millions of books that he's well known. But a lot of big name authors that have sold multiple millions of books could walk into almost any place and not be recognized.
Yeah.
Very common. Very, very common.
Well, and also like the thing with Stephen King is he's kind of become like a myth unto himself,
Right.
a bit. Same thing with like, Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo.
Yeah.
Like there are just certain books and whatnot, that just kind of like transcend, you know, pop culture and whatnot.
I
So
think I might have told you the story before. So my last year, I think it was the last year I attended Thriller Fest. So it was probably 2019, might have been 2018. Um, I met George R. R. Martin. And the only reason I met him was I was doing security. So we were assigned at one of his book events, one of his signing events, to kind of keep an eye on him. And it was very interesting. I was told to stand kind of to the side and behind him, and I'm like, okay, why? And they said, and the person that told me to do this said, because he's very afraid someone's going to come behind him and cut a lock of his hair. And I'm like, wait, what? Are you serious? Why? Why would someone do that? They're like, people have done it in the past to make like
bracelet, yeah,
no, where you put it in
trinkets.
water and stuff. Make like not potions. That's what I'm looking for. Like
Oh,
weird stuff. Like, so we had to stand back there, and like if anyone came back, we were like, "Yeah, please don't go behind George. Please just
yeah,
stay back." And it was just the weirdest thing. And so, and then I had to do a little bit more security one of the other days, or one of the other times he was there for one of his talks he did up on the stage. And I was listening to his stories, and very fascinating stories. But he's one of those people that, 20 years ago, he could walk down the street and nobody would give him the time of day. Now, with Game of Thrones and everything, that dude gets noticed when he walks down the street in New York City, and people come up to him and approach him. And
yeah,
those people that change in life, especially when they go years without being famous and all of a sudden become famous, they don't like it that much. It's not like, oh, it's so great to get recognized. They're like, no, I don't want to be recognized. I want to live. I want to go into Target. I want to go into Starbucks. I want to go into a place and not have 10 people stand around me and say, oh, can you sign this autograph? Or, oh, do you mind if I cut a lock of your hair off? It's like, I kind of mind.
that is kind of, kind of like the other thing of, people like, you know, your book should be made into movies, and it's like, well, that might be nice, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't want people showing up outside my house and, potentially, throwing tomatoes, or worse, because,
Right.
there's always that flip side of fame
The
too.
bad side of, there is
So
a bad side of fame. So I do think for some people that get it later in life, they've probably been pretty grounded, so maybe they can take it better. I think
yeah,
you feel bad for like the younger people, like kind of the teens or the child stars that they grow up in that, and that's what like the Britney Spears of the world.
yeah,
Um, I used to remember years ago, I'd always be like, "Oh, dude, she's so crazy. What's going on?" Well, then I actually read some stuff, and I think I saw one of the documentaries about her, and I did feel bad for her because it's like that's kind of your parents were involved in getting you into this lifestyle, and then you got hunted for years.
yeah.
I kind of pity that person. And yeah, if you could say, hey, you could trade places for the next 5 years with Britney Spears, would you do that? No way I would do it at all. No way.
Yeah.
No interest to.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people who, who have worked in Hollywood before and who have worked in entertainment, and a lot of them have told me kind of it, in private. I keep my kids out of show business because, there's some really, uh, you know, janky stuff going on there, and it's like, yeah, I can't really blame you for that. So
Right.
it's a
Yeah,
weird
absolutely.
it's a weird business. So
It is. Well, and it just attracts, I think it attracts this, not all, but it attracts this creepy subculture, whether it's claims of pedophilia
yeah,
or different stuff that have happened. I mean, casting couch is a real thing. It's been a
yeah,
real thing. Maybe it's not happening now anymore, but at some point in Hollywood's history, it's like, hey, you want a role, you're going to sleep with the director or the producer or the whatever. I mean, what in the world? Why would you want to subject yourself to that to get into? And I get why people have done it in the past. If it's their dream to be an actor or actress, I get it. But man, you're going to give away a part of your soul to get in some of this stuff, and it's not going to be worth it.
well, and that's kind of, I guess, one of the, the upsides of indie publishing, at least, for books, whatnot, and, podcasting is there's so much opportunity now to build your own brand that, yeah, it might work, you might have to put in some more work, but you don't have to compromise who
No,
you are as, a person. Um, anymore to get the big, contract or,
right, exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, 100%.
The only limit is kind of your, imagination, which kind of segues into my next question of, what's next kind of on your roadmap? I know you mentioned, next, like, how far like, I know you kind of have a roadmap for the Body Man, but, now that you've kind of got some stories under your belt, are you still kind of on the same roadmap, or are you coming out with, like, new ideas, or how does that
So yeah, no, I'm willing to open about it, or willing to open up about it. So
Yeah.
book 4 in the Bodyman series, the plan is for it to come out next summer, Downfall, which again is kind of it's really the follow up to Breach of Trust, but it's also got stuff happening during Supreme Justice. So that one's pretty set. I've got most of it figured out in my head. I've started writing it. I'll finish it up early next year is the plan. I'm trying to do another Omega Group book, probably early next year. That's kind of what I'm flipping to here soon. It's something that I wrote before, and it's actually Troy Evans' backstory. So it's actually the second book I wrote. I wrote the Troy Evans books out of order. I started with a book called Vengeance, and then the second book I wrote, because I had really embraced the Troy character, second book I wrote was kind of his backstory. So I've decided I'm going to kind of fix that story and put that out for the Omega Group. So it'll kind of be book 3 in that series, but it'll be a prequel basically of why Troy became Troy. So I'm hoping to get that and Downfall out next year. I do know where I'm going to go with book 5 for the Bodyman series. So I'll start writing that one probably towards the end of next year, 2026. And I do have another book that I started a couple years ago that I need to get back to, and I've kind of figured out how to do it recently. So I need to try to figure out when I can start writing some of that one, even if I just piecemeal it over the next year. That's one that I'm probably will try to go traditional with, and we'll see where I go with it. I won't give traditional terribly long, but I'm not going to go dump 2 years of my life waiting on traditional publishing to pick up that story. So I'll give it a fair amount of time. And if I don't get the interest I think it deserves, then it's a beautiful thing to have Bruno Media Publishing, and I can just do it myself and see if I can make it successful on my own. But it's a story that's pretty cool. It's a high concept story.
Yeah.
I'm really excited that I figured it out. It's in the world of the Secret Service, but it's not the Body Man, but it's in that vein. And it's first chapter will make you go, because I wrote the first chapter. I wrote the first third of the book already. First chapter will just make you go, he did not. And yes, I did. Well, I went there.
I think the other interesting thing is, when you kind of depart from what you're, and I'm not talking to you specifically, but just in general, when authors, they're known for one thing, and then they'll do another project that is radically different from what they usually write, and sometimes it can work. Sometimes it can work really well, and other times, it doesn't. I kind of had that a little bit, with Blood Ties, which was the book that, is a crime anthology that I was on your show with last year. What's funny about that is that's different from the Shadows of Deception universe, and it didn't sell well at first, but then I guess John or someone picked it up and it started getting more traffic, and then people were like, I like this better than the Shadows of Deception series. And it's like, well, that's interesting. So, I guess, have you noticed that like some people gravitate towards, oh, I like the Omega series better versus the Body Man, or, stuff like that?
They like the Omega Group series a lot less, I will tell you. The Body Man series, I'm very blessed. The Body Man, the first book in the series, which come November will be out for 4 years. I mean, it's still moving.
Yeah.
It still goes, and it's gone. And that's not abnormal for the first book in a series to kind of be the catalyst to keep moving. But yeah, it's still. I'm happy for the Omega Group, and it's was not a waste or a failure or anything like that. But
no,
nowhere near the traction for the Body Man series, which makes me want to put more effort to some degree sticking with the Body Man series because it seems to have resonated. But now what I could find is book 3, Troy's book. in the Omega Group series could all of a sudden start that series on fire.
Yeah.
So, and again, I don't do this. I think we've talked about it already in the thing. Is I don't do this for the money side of it.
No.
Stupid. I'd be glad to make a lot of money and try to figure out how I'm going to handle that. I'm a finance guy. I do finance. I'm a financial analyst by day. I think I'll be okay with $10 million in a bank account. I won't be a financial analyst anymore. I will be able to retire and write full time or travel full time. But that's not my goal. So I get to write what I want, and that's the beauty of being indie. I get to write what I want to write, and I want to put out good quality stories. It's not like, well, I'll just put out crap because I want to do crap. No, I want to put stories out there that Kyle Mills. I haven't seen much social media today since it's book launch day. But I happened to flip to Twitter. I think I was looking to check my direct messages, and the thing that popped up was Kyle Mills holding a tablet with Supreme Justice, that he got Supreme Justice.
I did see that, and I was like, wow, that's
pretty cool. And one of my favorite authors is buying my book. Brad Meltzer sent me an email tonight. Dude, I bought your book. When one of your favorite authors is out there buying your books, I tell you what, makes you feel really darn good that they're trusting you and enjoy your stories. That's pretty cool. And that's kind of the juice behind it. Yeah, I'm not going to make the New York Times bestseller list. I'm not going to sell 100,000 copies or even anywhere near 100,000 copies. That's okay. That's okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess Kyle shared, my episode on his, Facebook page and all over social media. And my aunt, who's a retired teacher who worked part-time for a bookstore, in the summer, she texted me and was like, why didn't you tell me that you were, interviewing Kyle Mills? And I'm like, well, part of it was, it was kind of under the wraps, for a little bit, but it kind of came together quickly. So, I got the offer and that, to have him on, and then a week later we were kind of doing it. So kind of, that turned around fast, but that's always, interesting too, is when you have book lovers, who are like, oh, I can't believe, you interviewed so-and-so or something like that. That's always a cool feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too. So.
Yeah, well, again, you know this, you've been doing this a lot longer than I've been doing podcasts, is, man, throw it out there and see who's willing to come on your show.
Yeah.
And you just don't. And I've had plenty of people reject me. And
oh, yeah.
The podcast gets pretty good. And it's not me. It's thanks to being on a really established, John has created the Spear Talk Network. It's got 50,000 plus subscribers. A Tale of Two Scribes does really well because of what John built, not because something I built, and I fully acknowledge that. But when you look at numbers and you start comparing podcasts, I get really good, solid numbers on viewers for my podcast.
Yeah.
I've had a bunch of authors say, no thanks. I'm like, seriously? That's free advertising for thousands of people.
Yeah, no,
cool.
I've had people, I've had people say, I always tell people, even in podcasting or, writing too, like, you get more no's for some stuff than you would yes, but the yeses you get, you really value. On the flip side, I've had people saying no, and then, a few years later they come back and say, sometimes they don't even, remember that I reached out to them initially, and now they're interested in, talking.
Well, and you can't take that one personal either, because you don't know the day you send it out to you might be a publicist, not even that person, but say you directly reach out to the author. Well, what if they had 10 requests for podcasts that day and they had no clue from Adam who you are, and they're like, oh, well, I know, Joe Rogan's a bad example, but I know this podcast name, so I'll go on that one.
Yeah.
This is the second one. So you just don't know. The only one that's bothered me a little bit, which has happened now a couple times, is I've had some no-shows. I've had some people not show up for podcasts, and I'm like ready to go. And, and again, I don't get paid to do podcasts. It's labor of love. I enjoy talking to other authors. I don't make a dime for it. Yeah, it helps advertise for sure. But man, when I get everything set up and I've spent an hour kind of doing prep work and I sit down and the person doesn't show up, kind of not super fun. And the last person that did it totally apologized. They thought it was the next day. And
right.
The next day. So it worked out. But I've had a couple that just like either blew me off or said, apologized. Oh, sorry, I missed that. But like, yeah, sorry, I got busy and I totally forgot. And it's like, I'm probably not rescheduling you. Let me be honest with you. I'm probably
Yeah,
good at that point. Once is cool, but it happens a second time. Shame on me we'll just stop at one. I think I didn't know
yeah,
what to do anyways. So
I've had people do that. I've also had people, pitch something to me to come on, and it's like, oh, you don't really want to do an interview or do a podcast. You want to do an infomercial, and you want me to specifically endorse this thing, and
right,
I'm not really sure I want to do
yeah,
that. Not necessarily even because it's, shady or anything like that. It just, I know, I know when someone wants to do an interview versus, when they want to just, do an infomercial.
yeah.
So,
Well, again, your
um,
your time is precious, so you have to kind of weigh it.
yeah,
And same with those people that you're trying to get on your podcast. I totally, like I said, I don't take it personal, but I also there's enough people. I've had how many have I filmed now? I can't remember. 65 episodes, I think, and a couple of those have been repeat episodes. So I've had a few people on twice. So say I've interviewed 55 people.
yeah,
I've got a big list. So if someone says no, not interested, cool. I just delete you from the list and go to the next name. And
yeah,
there's a lot of people out there that would love to come on a podcast, and I might slow down. I have slowed down honestly recently, just because I got too busy, and I'm like, instead of one a week, maybe I'll do two a month, and I think I got 4 in a row coming out now, just the way the cycle's working. But yeah, just I don't want to stop doing it though because I enjoy the connection, and I haven't gone to a conference in several years.
yeah,
So to me, it's still a way to connect with fellow authors, and people's stories are what draw me in. There's a
yeah,
lot of people that can tell a story. I want to know why you're telling a story. Why did you get to the point where it takes courage to write a novel. Hey, why did you want to do it? What was the thought process behind it? And everyone's story is a little different. There's no,
yeah,
like we talked about earlier, there's no sets little like, oh, they went to such and such college and they got a master's degree in creative writing and they did this and they got their agent and they got their first book deal and all. No, and they get up at 5 a.m. to write and they do this. No, there's no patterns. It's all over the board.
I was explaining to someone, like, I went to school for technical writing,
Hmm.
like business style writing, and
Right.
then, when the pandemic happened, that kind of killed, like, full-time social media, work for a lot of companies, so a lot of us started
Yeah.
doing freelancing. That's what I do, during as like a day job now.
Hmm.
But one of the things that's so interesting is a lot of technical, writing stuff that I learned, uh, a lot of it, if not all of it to a certain extent, has translated into fiction writing in
Hmm.
more ways than I thought it would. And
Right.
that's something that Travis Davis and I actually talked about,
Yeah. Travis is a great guy.
recently too. So,
Hmm.
um, but anyway, well, Eric, it's great as always, chatting with you. And
Always.
like I said, happy Pub Day. Where can
Thank you.
people, find Supreme Justice?
Probably
And
the easiest thing to do right now is go to Amazon and type in Supreme Justice.
yeah,
Or you type in my name, Eric P. Bishop, and it will give you a list of 5 books. Supreme Justice will be one of those 5. Get all 5 if you want, or just get Supreme Justice, or go get just The Body Man. If you want to grab a book, ebook, paperback, and hardcover for all 5 of them, actually. So all 5 are available in that format. If you don't like Amazon, which I know some people despise Amazon, and I respect that. I looked this morning, and I think the Barnes and Noble link is up. Bookshop.org link should be up soon, which kind of gets you to a lot of places. So there are some other alternatives for Supreme Justice. If they're not there today, they'll probably be there by the end of the week. But I think Barnes and Noble was already there this morning. So yeah, they can go to there, or they go to my website, ericpbishop.com. And from my website, I've got links to all the online retailers.
yeah,
And I will, one of the things, I haven't figured out what I'm doing yet, but I did actually, for the Body Man, I created challenge coins, which were really cool. They were really expensive, and I didn't get a dime of it back, but it was something I wanted to do because it was my first book, and I wanted to celebrate it. So,
right.
Supreme Justice, I don't know if we'll be able to see it with the light there, but I've actually done poker chips, much less expensive.
Oh,
Very, very.
cool.
Oh, I dropped that one. First, I got a box of them. So I do have some poker chips. So I'll definitely have a way on my website in the next week or two that people can just buy a poker chip if they want, and they're going to be really cheap. Mainly postage is probably going to be more than the chip, honestly. And then I definitely will, anyone that buys a book from me or John's Spear Talk website, they'll get a poker chip as well as part of their book order once those are up. And I haven't put those up yet because I don't have the physical copies. I don't have my physical copy yet. I did have one come in the other day, but it's mailed off to someone, so that one's gone. I've got an ARC up here, but I'll end it with this one. I always tell people, hey, I appreciate you to buy my book. I get it if you can't. If you can't only afford the ebook, buy the ebook, buy the cheapest version, absolutely. I go out and I buy all my books, a copy of each version, full price, just like I'm asking everyone else. So
Yeah.
I pre-order my ebook, I buy a hardcover from Amazon, and I buy a paperback from Amazon, full price, no discounts, no nothing. So my paperback and hardcover are coming tomorrow, I believe. I think they're coming at the same time. So I'll have copies finally, and those are the only copies I keep. I have a bunch in my shelf, obviously behind me. I sell all those or do book signings. So I keep one copy of paperback, one copy of hardcover. I write a note to myself in those books, kind of a time capsule of what I did, what I was thinking, and then those are the copies I keep, and all the other copies can go away.
Yeah.
Or given away.
Yeah, I always keep I do the same thing. I always, pre-order my own ebook, which I don't know why, but to me it's kind of like a weird it is kind of weird feeling because like I have the PDF file.
Exactly.
I know I can go in and I know I can go in and read it at any time. I still I still pre-order it.
You still get a loss on that one. you still pay a few dollars for your own book, basically.
Yeah, well, but at the same time, you do earn some money even if you're paying.
You get some of it, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. So depending on what your price point is, you're getting back a little bit of it, and you're getting a sale out of it. Again, I look at it as just as I said it. I'm asking people to go out and buy a copy of my book. I think it's fair that I buy a copy. I think that's a fair thing to do. And I go out and buy. Now I'll buy stuff from Amazon. I haven't placed my order yet. I'll place it this week. With being out of town, I didn't want books to come and I'm not here. But I placed a pretty big order from Amazon, and I pay costs. I pay the printing cost and the shipping cost, and that's it. And those are the ones I bring to book events or sell on my website. And I don't make much money on them, but I get them, at a significantly discounted price because it's only the printing cost.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm getting ready to, to launch one in a week myself, and, that's always kind of the, there's always like the period where, you have everything submitted and then you're anxiously waiting for it to kind of go,
right,
online too. And I still, every single year I get the question, and I'm sure you do, why doesn't Amazon allow you to pre-order, hardcover copies? And I'm like,
they're stupid.
Yeah, I'm like, well, on behalf of Eric and the entire indie author community, it's not us, it's Amazon.
Yeah,
we don't know why. It just is.
The only workaround for that is you have to set the book up through Ingram Spark, and then you can have pre-orders for the paperback and hardcover. And it will say it's Amazon, but it's set up through Ingram Spark. But the downside on that is you have to have that set up well in advance. And I literally made a tweak to the file on July 7th and uploaded a new file to Amazon. And it was a very, very minor thing, but it was something I caught. Oh, I don't want that there. I don't want that word, or I changed something. So Ingram Spark, man, you'd have to have set up. If you wanted pre-orders, you'd have to have the Ingram Spark file set up, 6 months in advance.
Yeah.
If you wanted pre-orders out for a while, like I do the ebooks. Ebooks are set up 6 months in advance.
Yeah.
I can do that with paperback and hardcover.
Yeah, I did edits for, since this has my final draft last night. Just kind of double checking everything and getting some final author blurbs, in from other people. And the other thing I ask is whenever people ask, when are you going to do pre-orders? I'm like, well, not to be rude, but would you actually pre-order, a paperback copy? And some people are like, no, not really. And I'm kind of like, okay, well, Well, then just bookmark the page and then come back
Yeah.
on.
Pre-orders. Yeah, I'll say this too, real quick. The pre-orders, and I do pre-orders for the ebook.
Yeah.
They're Pre-orders are really helpful for traditional authors that are trying to make a list. USA Today, New York Times, whatever, because all those pre-orders will count on the day one when it's published, and those will count towards your sales.
Yeah.
For indie publishers, the pre-orders have much less of an impact. You're better to build everything up and have people go, okay, July 15th, Supreme Justice is out, go
I
get it.
think at least for me, this is just kind of my experience. It's been helpful to certainly have the pre-order page, not necessarily because people are going to pre-order, but just because it lets people know, okay, this book is coming out.
100%.
It's something for people to see.
Absolutely.
And when I'm doing promo materials or going on other people's podcasts, it's always helpful to at least be able to point to people, here's the page, Audible, paperback, and hardcover copies are going to be available on this page on this day. So
I completely agree.
It down. So, but yeah.
No, there's no harm in having it in advance, and that is definitely it gives something tangible for some people to have and for you to market. Absolutely,
yeah. So,
but I can at least say for Supreme Justice, guess what? Right now, whether you're in the United States or in England or Italy or I had an Australia. So I've already had an Australia sale. I saw that. Saw Australia already sold something. So that's pretty cool to know. Hey, your book is already available across the world. I think I looked recently, and I looked at all the books real quick and just saw what countries through Amazon, and I'm sure there's been some stuff through other countries I just don't know of, like Ingram Spark stuff. I think for all the books, some have had more sales in other places than Bodyman's had the majority of them, I'm sure. I think it's like 16 countries have had book sales or bought from. So that's cool. That's pretty amazing thing. That's something I never would have thought years ago would happen, that I'd have people in Germany or Australia. I do pretty good in the UK. UK, I've actually had pretty solid numbers, which is interesting, but UK has been pretty solid for me. All the different countries in the UK, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, there have been like, at least for me, there have been some countries like South Africa even where people have bought books, and I'm like, I'm kind of curious. Like, I know Amazon is anonymous, but like I'm kind of curious who in South Africa found my book and purchased it, because I don't know anyone in South Africa personally, so that's always
besides me. The last person that goes through every the book for the last 2 books is she lives in South Africa. So she actually gets the final draft and says, see if you see anything wrong in this, and I give it to her about a month out, and then I'll still find some stuff or make some tweaks. But there's a lady I met that she's like, I'm really good at finding errors, and she had found some errors in the Bodyman years ago and said, hey, if you ever want to send me a book, I mean, I don't want anything, just send me the book and I'll just go through and find issues. And I'm like, I'll take free help anytime I can. So I sent her a book, or I sent her the digital copy about a month out, and she'll then in a few days she'll start sending me screenshots. Oh, did you mean for this word to be there? Or I'm like, dang man, I've looked at that page a dozen times in the last 6 months. How did I not see I spelt the wrong? How did that? It's not TEH. What in the world? And it's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's what my mom actually does for my book. So I always buy her
Proofreading's great.
Yeah, I always buy her a second e-arc. I always buy her a second arc copy, and she goes through and helps. It's always funny too, because she's not big into like the spy thriller stuff, but she loves Blood Ties, the Mafia series I do, which is interesting. But she's always like, when are you gonna do Blood Ties? And I'm like, okay, Mom. Thanks for letting me know which one you prefer.
There's something in your mom's past that's coming out that you're not aware of. So there's a story there from before you were a wee lad that she hasn't shared with you yet.
Well, I am Italian on my mom's side, so not to stereotype too much, but
she's definitely stuffed a few people in her life then if she's Italian. Oh yeah, she knows where the bodies are buried. You bet, baby.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
If I ever get like where I'm in a lot of trouble, I'll be like, Sam, give me your mom's number. I got to melt this body. I bet you she knows which river to dump it in outside of Long Island, outside of Manhattan. So
Yeah.
East or Hudson, which one? Which one, Mom? And she'll say Hudson. Do the Hudson. Like, okay.
Well, she is. For you and her do share the similarity of you're both originally from Connecticut, I believe. So.
Way to go, Mom. Us Connecticut people have to stick together. Even I don't go back there very often anymore.
Yeah, well, neither does she. So she
Great.
just,
I was glad to leave Connecticut when I was 19, or however old I was, and I told my parents I would never come back besides visits. It was a great place. It was actually a great place to grow up. I have so many fond memories. I just didn't want to live in the same spot my whole life. And it's like, get me out of here. I was. Plus, all the stories after the fact, my mom would be like, "Yeah, we have to go pay like $50 to get a new mailbox." So I was like, "You mean to go buy one at Lowe's?" And she goes, "No, to get the permit to change our mailbox with the town." And I'm like, "What kind of communist place do you live, man? I live in the South. If I want to go blow something up in the front yard, there's a good chance the cops will come by and be like, 'Hell yeah, man, blow that thing up.'"
Yeah, that's one of our neighbors a few years ago, like blew up his mailbox, and I was still new to Florida, but I guess like the cops came by and they were like, "Oh, no problem." Versus like even in Colorado, like people people get more iffy about their mailbox like that. So.
My neighbors will never see this, I don't think. So the other night I was out. I had a couple wasps or not bees, hornets, whatever, get me. And so apparently they've found a new place to nest. And so I was out there talking to my neighbors the other night, and one of them bit me. Man, where'd that thing come from? Tracked it down. My neighbor got the gas can, and he smokes, so he had a way of lighting it. He started putting some fires in the yard, basically. Of like, I was just like, I'm sorry, they were yellow jackets, not hornets, yellow jackets. So they were in the ground. He started pouring the gasoline and just throwing us. I was like, whoa, this is fun. I called him Beavis. I basically said, I need to get you a Metallica and an AC/DC. We need to get you some Beavis and Butthead shirts. And, you can do some fire stuff. So,
yeah, well, that's another thing I like about your style of, just writing in general, too, is I kind of described your writing style, at least to me, as kind of like a mid-90s action movie where it takes itself seriously enough, but you also, you can still have fun, with stuff too, and keep things somewhat lighthearted, kind of like GoldenEye.
There you go. I'll take that.
That is one thing that kind of drives me crazy is movies these days either seem to be like way too like slapstick and not serious at all, or they tend to be like ultra dark, and it's kind of like, I miss like 90s/2000s action films where they could still be serious but fun, and that's one of the reasons I guess why I'm kind of becoming a writer is to kind of revitalize that fun style.
Absolutely, yeah. We've got some. Let's see. This one's got some references to Seinfeld, Dallas. Music wise, I always have a U2 reference. There's a Bon Jovi reference in here. I think Metallica might get a head nod. AC/DC. Yeah, there's all kinds. I'm a child of the 80s. I was little when the 80s, but I grew up, or not too little, I guess, but mainly the 90s. I remember more because I was a teen, the early part of the 90s. But I love putting those references in there, and just the pop culture stuff to me is fun. I always put it in the books, and I always try to put it in and get a good laugh from some of the characters at least.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing too. Is like if I know that if I were to make like any of my books into movies, I would have to pay like a crap ton of music royalties. Just for the music alone, and it's like, I think I'll keep it to book format. So
smart.
I might like Phil Collins, but I don't want to pay the EMI music rights. Those are not cheap. So
no. I would say don't do that. So, well, thank you, Sam. For any of the people still on, and the version you can get won't have this nice little band not for resale on it. So Supreme Justice is out.
Yeah, well, like I said, Eric, I appreciate you coming on, and it looks like we made it through without any outages. So
no EMPs, no nuclear attack, and the thunderstorm didn't knock out my Starlink. So we got through the night.
That's nice. Thank you, Elon, for being reliable. And yeah, folks, it's been a great week so far, and I'll be back tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern, to cover the news and more serious stuff, maybe. So, but until then, take care. Since the Assassin is out 1 week from today, speaking of book launches, so appreciate that. And thanks to Eric for coming on as always. And go check out Supreme Justice. I have it on my Kindle, and I'm looking forward to diving into that here.
Thank you, Sam.
So take care, everyone.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.